right, welcome to the walkthrough for Lab 3. You can navigate to the week 2. Underneath all the lectures, there's a lab section, and you can see there is Lab 3. Not only is there the assignment folder, but there's also the all-important instructions. So I'll go ahead and open both of those tabs. Real quick, if we take a look at basic vocal editing, that's Lab 3. In this lab, we'll be doing something called comping vocals. So we're actually going to comp a vocal take to make a final vocal performance for the accompanying song. Maybe you've recorded vocals before in a DAW. Maybe it wasn't Pro Tools. And maybe sometimes you did multiple takes or you did the same part over and over again. And then I don't know, tried to edit those takes together. Well, this is pretty common in professional recording practice where you have an artist do multiple takes and then you sort of take the best of each. Today, we're going to review 3 takes and we're going to use something called playlist mode. And actually, playlist mode will help us keep things sort of organized as we're auditioning different takes, and then will allow us to sort of copy and paste them together. We're going to be using the specific playlist function, which will allow us to comp or copy and paste without ruining the timing of not only the original takes, but then the final take that we'll use in the production. So some of the things we're going to cover is the exciting world of properly labeling and setting up a Pro Tools project. We'll be customizing the color schemes of the views in the edit windows. This might seem pretty straightforward, but it's a little bit tricky, so we'll go over how to do that. We're going to make some beat-accurate edits, just like we did in Lab 2, but instead now we're going to do it to vocal tracks using basic editing tools that we've used in the past few labs, as well as in using grid mode, which we used in the last lab, and a new function today called playlists. So we're going to comp and consolidate a final vocal track, and then we're going to create a final bounce file, and then we'll properly save and back up the project. So as always, as according to the rubric, you get 5 points for session setup, and another 5 points for organization. You'll also get 5 points for turning it in the correct place and in the correct format. Today's lab's unique points are 5 for comping. So you're actually going to do 2 comps. You're going to do one that you're interested in doing and then one that's prescribed by the lab, which you could kind of consider as like maybe your client or the producer said, hey, I want these parts of these takes in the final comp. Which is pretty common. Artists will usually give me notes and say, hey, I want these specific, parts, or I want the verse from take 2 and then the chorus from take 3. So let's dive right in. This lab's a little bit different than the previous labs because we don't actually have to create a lab, we don't have to create a session. The session's already there for us. So after you kind of go through some of these objectives, as always, there's some shortcut keys in here that we'll talk about. You probably just want to go ahead and download lab3.zip. So if you download it, it should show up on your desktop. That's how I have it. Then you can just double click on it to unzip it. When you do that, then you'll get this Lab 3 folder and you can just click and open the session file here, this PTX file, and that will launch Pro Tools. I, of course, already have the session open because I have to do a few things to be able to do this walkthrough video. Great. So next, real quick, by the way, if you noticed when I downloaded my Lab 3 zip, it just showed up on the desktop. It might be different on your computer where your actually downloads go. So you can actually in Chrome, go to Chrome and go to settings. And if you go there in settings, you can go to the downloads tab and you can actually go in here and change where you want your downloads to go. So I actually just have them going to the desktop. Some people have them going to different places like the download folder, and then the download folder never gets cleaned out and there's a bunch of stuff in there and then you're wondering why your computer's running slow. That often can be a problem. So I like to just have it on the desktop. That way it sits on the desktop and I save it and I back it up. And then when I'm done with it, I can just delete it from the desktop and it doesn't clog up my computer's hard drive. Not necessary, but could be a good practice you could use. So if you've done that, it should download this zip file right to the desktop and you'll be able to open it. So we'll go ahead and do that. The first thing we're going to do is, now that we have this session, we're going to save it, but instead of just calling it Lab 3, we're going to use the proper file naming convention. So we'll go up to File and Save Session As. And under Save Session As, we'll go ahead and give it the year, month, day, my name, and Lab 3. So we'll go ahead and save that. Great. So now you can see it's labeled year, month, day, my name, and Lab 3. Cool. So once we've done that, the next step is to go ahead and take a listen to it. Let's take a listen to the track here a little bit. It's a bit of a slow jam. Might be a little quiet. In general, I think it's a fairly quiet track. And we'll notice here comes the vocal at verse A.
Lift up the tablecloth calmly, sweet purple haze in your eyes.
Well, great. Go ahead and take a listen to it, and you can figure out what you'd like to do on the particular track. First thing we need to do is go ahead and start labeling and color coding stuff. I went ahead and I took all the track names away. If you notice, the only thing labeled is the main vocal tracks or main vox. If you notice, everything else I've labeled audio 1. You're like, that's ridiculous, Doug. When would you ever get a session that has no track names and everything's just named audio 1 and there's like 57 tracks? Like all the time. The one thing about this session is, because the tracks were properly labeled when they were recorded, each clip here within the tracks has the actual name of what the original track was. So I didn't actually cover my tracks enough here. So you can see over here in the clips list, all the tracks are actually named. So you can guess, you could solo and listen to each track. You can kind of tell this is an acoustic guitar track. Or you can just see it's AC guitar. So in order to relabel it, I'm just going to go ahead and double click on the track name here. It opens this name, the track window, and I'll call this AC GTR and hit OK. And when I do that, if you notice now, the track is named AC Guitar. Looks like the next two tracks are piano left and right. So I'll go ahead and label those piano left and then piano right. Great. So I labeled those. Let's see, this is string bass. So I'll go ahead and label that string bass. Let's see what's next. The next track is violin. And then, I don't know, it looks like it's just backup vocals then. So these are all just backup vox, and I'll do 1, and then I'll copy and paste this and just do like, backup vox 2, then backup vox 3, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to label everything, but you can pretty much see these last ones are all just sort of vocal parts. They sort of come in the end.
Have a problem, just be my solution till I hit rock bottom.
Great. Yeah, in general, this track seems to be pretty loud. I think it was pretty quiet. It seems to be recorded at pretty low level. All right, so once you've got that all set up, the next part of the lab is sort of the crux of the lab. It also asks you, by the way, real quick, to color code everything. This is kind of annoying in Pro Tools. So right now, if I went to change the color of any of these tracks, I would click on what's called here the color palette or track color code. If I click on that, notice it opens the color palette window. Well, if I was to go ahead and pick a color now, notice how all the tracks are highlighted white. So if I was to do that, it would change all the tracks to orange, which is pretty obnoxious. So instead, what I'm going to do is if I click Option on one of the nameplates and then click on just that, it'll be just that track. So I can change just that track. I'll leave it like this sort of standard blue. If I want the clip to be that standard blue, I can click on that as well. Now you notice if I have my grabber tool out, so I'm actually just clicking on the track name. I'll make acoustic guitar like a greenish, and then I'll also make the clip in the track green as well. So usually I like to have my track and my clip the same color. All right. Well, that's fine. So you can go through and color code everything. It shouldn't take you too long. Once again, I'm just clicking on the left-hand gray area here, and that's opening the color palette. I'm option clicking and then just clicking on each individual name or each individual clip to select either that clip's name or a clip's color or that track's color. Great. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we get into the main part of the lab, which is comping vocals. So up until now, it looks like in this session, there's only one vocal track, but that's not actually true. I'm going to click and drag and make this vocal track a little bit bigger so I can kind of see what's going on. And if I go to where it says waveform, and I actually go from waveform view to something called playlist view, look what happens. Now, all of a sudden, we see not only is there this main vocal, but it looks like there's two other takes. So if I play this first take here,
Lift up the tablecloth calmly.
There's the first take. And by the way, if I want to audition the main Vox 02 or 03, I can do so by just clicking on this little speaker icon. It used to be a solo button, by the way, or an S button, but now it's just this little speaker icon in the latest version of Pro Tools. So if I play here, here's Vox.01.
Lift up the tablecloth calmly.
Now here's
Sweet
Vox.02.
purple haze in your eye.
And here's main Vox.03.
You're shaking the sand and I'm crawling. A drifter beneath the
And back to 01. So I can basically swap through all the different ones. You might not notice a huge difference between all the different tracks, but there is subtle differences. You may notice there's some tuning issues on some of the tracks. We do have Melodyne on the school computers, and of course I have it on my system. But if you're just downloading this, the NU version, you'd have to authorize Melodyne, and there's a whole process. So if you have any questions about that, you can let me know. But I think as it stands now, we don't have individual licenses for each person for Melodyne. Anyways, that's not really the point of this lab, is not to correct any pitch issues, but rather find the best takes. So the lab asks you to go ahead and go through and listen to the main Vox.01 track, and then listen to the other two takes and decide which takes you like the best. And so then what it's going to ask you to do is create your own Vox comp. So instead of highlighting stuff and deleting stuff and editing or kind of destroying the original clips or audio, I'm going to go ahead up to this tiny little disclosure triangle up here, and I'm going to go to the playlist selector, and I'm going to create a new playlist. I'm going to call this playlist, instead of main Vox.04, I'll call it Vox Comp.01. And hit OK. Now, if you notice, look what happens. I now have a new blank take called Vox. Let me put Vox in there. Sorry about that. Vox Comp.01. And now I have all these takes. I have the Vox.01. And by the way, I can move them around if I want them in order. So I have 01, 02, 03 here. And I can go now here with the selector tool and say, okay, I like this part of this take. And instead of having to copy and paste or do any weird stuff, I can just hit this little up arrow here, and this will actually take what I have selected and put it up in the take above. So then let's say I want to take this part of Vox.02. That'll go up there, and then I can do the same thing with Vox.03. So if you notice now, what's kind of cool too is each take, when I put it into the comp, it keeps its original color. So this kind of helps you sort of organize your clips, like knowing like, okay, this is from Vox.01 because it's blue. This is like a shade of purple and a different shade of purple for Vox.03. So if you ever open a session and it has like all the colors in the rainbow, you know that the artist or the engineer did many, many takes. By the way, there's a way we can sort of cover that up too so that you don't know how it was done. So go ahead and do your own comp and decide which parts of which takes that you like. There's also some like, I think there's just like an erroneous thing from another song here at the end. So you might want to just not use that. I believe the song sort of just ends at the end. So after you do that, go ahead and make a second comp take. So you're going to create another one and you're going to call this one now. So I'm going to go to new and make the second comp take. Notice it automatically labeled it .02 for you. We'll call it VoxComp02. And then in this take, it wants very specific comps. So in the intro, it wants nothing. In this specific one in VoxComp.02, it wants you to, for verse A, to use Vox.01. So if we go to verse A, it wants Vox.01. So I'll just go from verse A to chorus A, shoot that up there. Let's see, I won't do all of them, but chorus, for the chorus A, it wants Vox.03. So I'm going to go to here and do Vox.03. By the way, you may be like, oh, if you zoom in here, like, do you notice how it's like cutting off one part or something? The cool thing is about once you paste the clips, you could always go and just stretch it out, or, you know, delete something over there and then just do fades if necessary. So by the way, I'm still in grid. So if you notice I'm in grid, I can only move to grid. If I hold down command, it allows me to just like go into slip momentarily so that I can move it however I'd like. Great. So yeah, go ahead and do that. I'll just, what else is it asking for? It's asking for verse B is Vox.01 again. So here's verse B. We'll shoot that on up. Obviously, I'm doing this real crudely. You could go in, you know, and fix like, you know, these parts here where it might clip or whatever. So once you've done that, let's see, let me just do a couple other ones. O2, O2, and O1. So I'm going to do O2, O2, and then for the outro, O2, why doesn't it let me do that? Oh, I don't know what just happened. Oh, good times. Just got really small for some reason. O2, and then for the outro, it wants O1. So shoot that on up there. Cool. So once you've done that, it wants you to go ahead and do another function. You could just go back to waveform view if you wanted to, and notice how now it's just that kind of collapsed vocal track. You could go and highlight all the clips here, and if you hit Command F, as in fade, it'll open this batch fades window, and you can go ahead and apply just basic fades to the start and ends of clips. So we can go ahead and do that. And then if we like, we can go Option Shift 3, and that will, or you can go up to File and, Edit and Consolidate Clip, and it will turn that take into one consolidated clip. So now if you look at it, you're just like, oh yeah, like this was all one vocal take. If we undo it, you can see that it was actually a series of many vocal takes. That being said though, if somebody was mixing it after you and they wanted to tweak something, or you go back, you have all the original takes here that are undisturbed. And by the way, if you start cutting and pasting stuff and copying and moving it, you're going to ruin the original timing of the take, where with this, it doesn't mess with that at all. So after you've done that, like it said, it tells you to apply some fades. It wants you to do a basic mix. So you don't really have to get carried away here. Really, all you should do is sort of use the faders and panners. If you're looking for some inspiration, you can actually find the original music video that the students made. This is actually a student called Matt Burmeister. He's an alumni of Northeastern. He was part of the songwriting club, probably pretty similar to some of you. Yeah, Matt wrote this song. They did like a video down on the Charles. You can watch it. So if you're trying to figure out like how you should mix, this might be a good reference. So by the way, right now we've only been working in the edit window. So if you go up to window and you go to mix, it opens this other mix window. And if you look in this mix window here, you have things called faders and panners. So if I was to press play here,
Way that the waves always bow to the sea. Your feelings.
I could make the piano louder.
Way that the waves always bow to the sea.
And notice I could pull down the vocals here, make them quieter. With the faders, this affects volume. I could also pan things left and right. So I could use these panners here to put it only in the left.
No one, but I've waited so long.
Notice that got more stereo. Here's this violin. I could make it louder. And I could pan it hard left.
Don't forget the way that the waves
Oh, I don't like that loop.
bow to the sea.
Let's go to verse B.
Your feelings, don't forget, make sure to call.
Sorry.
You see the stars overhead.
Here's a backup vocal. Maybe I'll pan it hard right.
Game that you play is enthralling. I think you left me for dead.
Great. So by the way, I'm just making arbitrary decisions here. And by the way, throwing your fader all the way up to 12 is probably not a good idea on tracks. But you know what? Go ahead, do a little mixing, adjust these volume faders and panners. By the way, this is no means an exhaustive, plan for mixing, but it's just kind of get you comfortable with how to adjust individual track volumes as well as panning. By the way, if you don't like working in the mix window, you can adjust the volume and panning of each track right here in the edit window. Once again, if your edit window doesn't look like mine, if your edit window looks more something like this when you open it, here, let me just collapse the playlist so it kind of looks. So if your edit window looks like this, where there's like no other information besides this little square, you can go up to the edit window view selector and turn on, I like to have inserts A, sends A through E, IO, track color, and I think that's good to start out with. That way then you can see your IO, your volume, and your panning of each track, as well as any inserts. We'll use these later in the semester, and sends we'll use much later in the semester. You can also see where things are routed to too, so you can see that stuff's are going out the main outputs. All right, well, that's pretty much the lab. Once again, it does tell you to bounce the song, and it asks you, it doesn't ask you to actually save a copy in, because you should have been saving it correctly. It still should be sitting on your desktop here with the audio files all there. What we want to do, there's a bounce files folder here. So we do want to take a mix of the song and we want to go ahead and bounce it. So we can do that by basically, you could select this last marker here. You could hit Shift Return to select everything, or if you'd like, you could just click there up in the timeline and select everything. Once again, I clicked up here where it says 161, like in the ruler, and selected everything. Then you can go to File and Bounce Mix. I still call it Bounce to Disk because that's what they used to call it. I don't know, like 15 years ago, maybe longer. But yeah, Bounce Mix. This will create a stereo version that we could listen to, like upload to SoundCloud or Spotify or something. As far as the mix settings, we want to just keep it the same as our sessions. So year, month, day, your name, and then lab 3. We want to keep it as wave, output 1 and 2. We'll have the file format be interleaved, and then we want to change the bit depth to 16-bit and leave the sample rate at 4:1. By the way, it's asking us where we want to actually bounce this file, so we should probably go to choose and just make sure that it's going into the lab 3 bounce files folder that should be on our desktop. So if we do that, we want to have offline on so we don't have to listen to the entire song, meaning it'll bounce it in non-real time. If I now go to my desktop, boom, here's lab 3. And sure enough, if you look in the folder, all the audio files are there. The bounce file that we just made, the .wave file, is in there. And not only do we have lab 3, but we have our session file that we named year, month, day, your name, and lab 3. So when we're done with that, all we have to do is right click and hit compress. On my computer, it's called compress. On yours, it might be called archive. Depends on what version of the OS you have. When I do that, it'll make a compressed version of this. Should only take about 5 seconds. Notice this file is going to be a little bit larger. It's almost 500 megabytes. So it may take a little longer to upload to Google Drive. You'll of course want to log into your Google Drive using your username at husky.neu.edu. Zip it and make sure that you're sharing it with anyone with the link, not just anyone at Northeastern, and make sure that they can edit it. Remember, there's a little help video here within the help video to show you how to do that. Also, going through the bounce to disk or bounce mix task is also here as well. Well, cool. Hopefully that helps. As always, if you have any questions, let me know.